Okay, it's recording. It has
Do I
sound.
need this thing closer to
We're
me?
okay, we got sound.
Okay.
There's no big...
Don't have to be on top of it.
Good morning. This is Harmon Houghton with Native Media Network, and we're broadcasting today from Indian Market in Santa Fe, and we're doing this as a collaboration with Santa Fe Tourism, as well as bringing in, as a gathering place, the individuals that are involved with Indian country, art, authors, artists, media creators. And I have with me today really a bedrock person from the Iroquois country, Peter Jemison of Seneca, and we'll give a little talk and discussion about the Wampum Belt, because a lot of people look at the Wampum Belt as a representation. It has the value kind of built into it, and I really can't talk very much about it. I'm sure Peter can. So Peter, let us know a little bit more about the Wampum, the value that's intrinsically built into it from not only historic but a cultural level where it's still alive today.
Sure. Well, first of all, Nyaweskana Gagwego, Onanda Waga ni A, Ganon sa Tetel ni Yaso, Gananda Gan ni Kanongi, Ochakwata Nonyo, Nangat Manisa de Hahon Hojanu, Don Hejohe. In my language, which is the language of the people of the Great Hill, we call ourselves Onanda Waga. I'm Onanda Waga. Seneca has no meaning in our language. Each of us who is a Onanda Waga belongs to one of 8 clans. I belong to the Heron clan. So the name they've given me is Ganonza Tetel. And so I just extend greetings that each and every one of you are well that are hearing this. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what we call Gutgoat. Gutgoat refers to the actual shell that is used in these wampum. And for us, wampum is not money. That's one of the first things that people think of. They think, well, it was money. It was a trade item. So for example, the way we obtained wampum, the Shinnecock out on what we now call Long Island, they were harvesting shell that comes from the ocean. They were harvesting the quahog clam, they're harvesting the lightning whelk. Then they trade that across the, now we call it today the Long Island Sound, to the Pequot. The Pequot take that shell and they fashion beads from it. Those beads they eventually trade to us, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, and we take that bead and we put them into a belt and we assemble them to remind ourselves of important messages, to create what the anthropologist calls a mnemonic device. So when we pick it up, the message comes back through the belt to us, and the visual helps us to remind ourselves what the message is that has been placed in this belt by those who assembled it for us in the beginning. And we have, over the years, we've had difficulty because many of our belts, they went away from us for about 100 years. And then it began gradually coming back into our possession through the work of our leaders, going to the various museums, and then eventually a law was passed that brought us more wampum through the NAGPRA law. But in the end, this wampum comes back into our possession, and we have to pass along orally the tradition that is connected to these wampum belts. So this morning I brought along with me 2 different belts. The first one, which I'm holding up, is called the Toro. I think it's pretty obvious how it's called the Toro. It's got two dark lines on a white background. And this belt was one of the very first created so that we could have an interaction with our European brothers and sisters that were coming here. And the first ones that we made this for was the Dutch. The Dutch wanted to have trading agreements with the Mohawk people. And so the Mohawk people, they got together and they assembled this belt so that they could tell the Dutch, you know, they were piloted by this guy whose name is Henry Hudson. And after a while, he names this river after himself. So today we have a Hudson River. The people living there, they referred to it as the Mahicantuck. But let me get to the story of the belt. So we said this way, we're traveling along through the river of life going forward in time, and we're traveling in our canoe. In our canoe, we have everything we need. We have our language, we have our law, we have our way of life, our belief. We have our knowledge of medicine. We have our knowledge of all the things that are around us that are a part of our way of life. Everything is in this canoe with us, and we're traveling forward in time. But next to us is the European. They're traveling in a ship. In that ship, they have their law, they have their language, they have their religion, they have their belief, whatever that is. It's in there with them in their ship. But we can travel forward in time so long as we can respect the right to exist, and we can create a relationship. But it has to be on the basis of that we're equal. We're not their son. We are their brother. And in the center here, there's 3 white beads. And we said this is peace and friendship forever. But here's the deal. We don't want them to get out of that ship and try to steer our canoe. We're not going to get out of our canoe and try to steer their ship for them. We have a right, each of us, to exist. And if we could agree to this, they said, this will last as long as water flows downhill, as long as the grass turns green at a certain time of the year, as long as our elder brother, the sun, makes a journey across the sky. If we can agree to this way of understanding each other, this is how long this agreement could last. First we present it to the Dutch, but then we had to present it to the French. We had to present it to the English, ultimately present it to the Americans, to remind them of who we are, that we are their equals, that we walk on this land just like they do, and we travel forward in time, and we have to find a way to live together in peace and friendship. So this belt called the Toro, this is really our original agreement with those who came from across the ocean and came here seeking, for themselves a better life. So that one is the Toro. Now, one of the things that I've been doing for many years now, probably almost 28 years, I've been working to commemorate a very important treaty, a treaty for us that ended the Revolutionary War. When the Revolutionary War came along, we had the revolutionaries coming to our people and asking us to join with them in their fight. Then we had, on the other hand, we had the English. They came to us. They want us to join on their side in this fight. And we said, we don't know what this fight's about. It's because you're all related. You're like cousins to each other. So we don't know what this fight is about. Leave us out of it. But what we realized quickly was that if one side or the other won, they're going to consider our land the spoils of war. They're going to take our land from us. And not only that, they're going to fight these battles on our land. So we have to make our own minds up, like how are we going to deal with this? We had these people like Joseph Brant coming to us saying, you have long-standing agreements with the English. You need to back the English. Then on the other side, we had the different ministers like Samuel Kirkland, John Dean. They came to the Oneida, they came to Tuscarora. They said, you have been brought up in our tradition. You need to help us out here, the revolutionaries, during this war. Our people, our warriors, they pick sides. Our way of message of peace that had been brought to us over 1,000 years ago by our man we call the peacemaker, now suddenly is being fractured by this war that's going to take place in our land. And we got warriors fighting on the side of the American cause, the revolutionaries. We got warriors fighting on the side of the English. But when the war came to an end, the Treaty of Paris of 1783 makes no mention of the fact that our people were involved in that war. It excludes us. And then there's this assumption on the part of the revolutionaries, of the Americans, that whatever the British had claimed from us, now it's theirs because they defeated them. Meaning our land now is suddenly their land. And so we had to go then and begin a negotiation and say, that's not true. They didn't win our land. They didn't defeat us. They simply beat the English in this fight of theirs. So the first treaty that's made is one called the Fort Stanwix Treaty. And what happened was we sent our warriors over there to listen to the terms of that treaty. We said, don't sign anything, just go over there and listen. Bring it back to the Haudillon Nation, meaning our chiefs. Bring it back to the women, bring it back to the people. Let them decide how we're going to go forward here. And at that time, the warriors didn't listen. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to sign that treaty, which was a big land grab. It was basically just taking our land from us. And right away, the land speculators jump in. And they begin to try and purchase land wherever they get an opportunity. We have the states at the same time trying to get in there and buy land. So it's this free-for-all now for our lands. So we says this isn't good. So we have to start now to address this matter to the president himself, George Washington. After the Revolutionary War, George Washington pretty much disassembled the army of the United States. Only 13 of them, but he disassembled it. And so now there's a Western Confederacy. This Western Confederacy in places like we call Ohio and Indiana and out in that direction, they wind up kicking the butt of the U.S. Army twice, real bad. To the point where the U.S. Army was just teetering, and so was the U.S. government. And that Confederacy is saying to us, the Haudenosaunee, join up with us. We'll drive these people right back into the sea. So here's Washington, he's having to weigh this thing out. Like, do I go to war with these people, or do I try to find a peaceful settlement? From beginning in 1790, 91, and 92, we made journeys to Philadelphia, and we addressed our concerns directly to the president. We said we need a treaty. We need a treaty that brings about a lasting peace, because we have people coming onto our land and shooting us like they would shoot a deer, you know, with no repercussion. There's no punishment for whatever they do, and we can't live that way. Otherwise, we go right back after you, and we start going after your people. So in the end, we begin to negotiate a treaty. They sent a man named Timothy Pickering. Timothy Pickering comes to Canandaigua, New York, and all of our people make their way to Canandaigua from whatever community they were from. The Mohawk, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, the Oneida, and the Tuscarora, we all assembled there in Canandaigua, New York. The Mohawk were the least represented because many of them had chosen to follow Joseph Brant across the river to settle on a tract we call the Haldeman Tract, up in what is now called Canada. And so there were many of them there. And even Pickering, he looked upon Joseph Brant's emissaries or his representatives as being part of the British and not being an American, quote unquote, or living on American soil. So we negotiate this treaty. It takes months. And it's, at the time of the year, in the fall of the year, our people are having to go out and gather deer for the people to feed them. They're having to create temporary shelter so that we can live there in the city, which is very small at the time. And we negotiate with Timothy Pickering. We have the Quakers there as observers. The Quakers are making sure that what is written is actually what's being said, so that there's a unanimity to this, the way in which this is going to be understood. And eventually, on November the 11th, 1794, we reach an agreement, and the Treaty of Canandaigua is formed. Sometimes it's referred to as the Pickering Treaty. And this Wampum Belt, which was actually commissioned by George Washington, and I'm going to hand half of it to Harmon. It's a very big belt. This belt is the one that commemorates that Canandaigua Treaty. And there are 13 large figures on it. I hope you can see them. These 13 large figures represent the 13 original states. And over here where my hand is, there's two smaller figures. One represents the Ganyankehaga, or the Mohawk people, keeper of the eastern door. The other one, it represents the Onondaga, or the Seneca people, keeper of the western door. And we are linked arm in arm in a message of peace. In the center, there's a house. There's two houses, really. There's one that's a little wider, and it sits on the outside of one which is narrower and taller. The one on the outside is the white man's house. And on the inside of it, there's our house, our longhouse. We call it Ganosascape. It's where our ceremonies take place. It's where our council meets. It's where we counsel for the welfare of the people. And this doorway can be open so long as we can live in peace and friendship. So it goes back to that Toro Wampum. Many promises are made by this Canandaigua Treaty. Among the promises that are made by that Canandaigua Treaty is one which is still being observed, and that is the United States will set aside $4,500 annually to give to us cloth. Originally it started out with, what they call articles of useful husbandry. It was everything from hoes, and we had access to a blacksmith and things like that. When they first began to give us cloth, it was calico. And then it went downhill and downhill because $4,500 today does not buy much, but it can still buy bolts of this muslin. And the muslin then is delivered to our nation headquarters in the fall of the year, and then it's distributed to our people on a per capita basis. So I could go to my fall festival and I could ask the clerk's office to give me my yard and a half of this treaty cloth. This has been going on for 200 plus years now, the distribution of this. There were times when they said to us, hey, look, let's do it this way. We'll just give you a lump sum of money and we'll forget about it. We said, no. We have to have you commit yourself to this being an annual thing that you do to remind you of this treaty you made with us. There are many other aspects to this treaty. The free use and enjoyment of our land. There have been so many violations to that. They flooded 10,000 acres of our land on the Allegheny Reservation in 1964 by building a dam they called the Kinzua Dam to protect Pittsburgh from flooding. There have been violations on the Tuscarora Reservation. They built a huge retention pond for power, for the Niagara Power Project, taking away Tuscarora land. Then they widened the St. Lawrence Seaway in order to allow shipping to go up through there. And then all these huge factories developed along the St. Lawrence and totally polluted Mohawk territory and caused all kinds of diseases among the Mohawk, among their livestock. They ruined the fishing. They did all kinds of things. This is not the free use and enjoyment of our land. So now those places are gone. They've closed them down finally. Places like Alcoa, places like GM, they closed those things down. And Domtar, this big polluter up there. So, we have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant. That's one of my jobs. One of my jobs is to continue to educate my own people and all people that I can reach with my voice about the fact that our treaties, according to us, they're still in place. No matter how old they may be, that does not make them less, because the Constitution of the United States says treaties are the supreme law of the land. It doesn't say treaties with France, treaties with Russia, treaties with Iran, or whatever. It just says treaties. We're the original ones that they made treaties with. And so we have to insist these are still a valid agreement between our people and the people of the United States. So all the people that are hearing me who are citizens of the United States, you're an equal part of this treaty. It's not just us, the Haudenosaunee, the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, and Tuscarora. It's all of us together make sure that this treaty is upheld. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Peter. It's really one of the lesser-known facts about the formation of the government is the involvement of the Iroquois people in Philadelphia with all of the founding fathers that were regular visitors up to Iroquois, the Longhouse, to learn of what a representative government is all about.
Right.
And in many ways, the Longhouse process or the Longhouse political constituency is the representative thing. The People's House, the House of Representatives, the Senate with all of the leaders and all of the clan people that really were there to protect the people at all times.
Yeah.
And the President of the United States, his primary duty, or one of the initial primary duties, was to deal with the Indian nations.
Yes.
So there is a strong standing precedent in the formation of this country on the sovereignty of the Indian nations.
Absolutely.
And the treaties were recognition of this sovereignty. Maybe we can just put a few words.
It's hard for people to imagine, but in 1794 there's only 15 states. And what we're really doing is we're recognizing the supremacy of the United States in the treaty-making process. It's not the states who have the right, because the states are only part of a union of 15. And so this is the Supremacy Clause, where the United States is the supreme power in terms of this particular government that exists, this democratic or republican form of government, they call it. So this is really one of the bases, and they learned so much from us. In 1644, an Onondaga leader named Canasatigo, he went to a negotiation in Pennsylvania, and there he laid out this thing, which he said was that our people, we had learned that by a union we were much stronger. So when the Six Nations formed themselves together, first we were 5 and then expanded to 6 when the Tuscarora joined us, that we were a much stronger people, able to withstand forces from the outside coming at us. And he said to them, you should really think about this, and you should join yourselves together in a union. Benjamin Franklin sat there and he heard that message. He wrote it down and he published it. Benjamin Franklin was a publisher and he had a printing press. So he disseminated this information that there should be formed a union. And that what you have is what he was talking about, a representative form of government. You choose your leaders. You don't have the king telling you what to do. You don't have somebody appointing your leaders. You, the American people, are supposed to choose your leaders. And you have to choose them wisely. You have to choose them carefully. We're coming to a point in time where you're going to make a choice. I don't know if you're going to hear my words before you make that choice, but make a very good choice. Because whatever choice you make, that's the direction you're going to be going in. And you're going to be going in that direction for a while, and you set in motion forces that you can barely imagine. So you have to be very careful. But this is the democracy that you patterned your government after, our form of government.
The important part at least getting into this native media network and building an audience is really the youth. The youth have to recognize the history, where they came from,
Yes.
and the respect that the Union, the Iroquois Confederacy, brought into their Union. And that kind of part, I think, the political system of the U.S. government has kind of discarded.
Yes.
And that was part of the cabinet.
Yeah.
So the whole representative and advisory part somehow took a wrong direction somewhere. I don't know if you have any
Well,
insight.
I don't know if
into
I
that.
have an insight, but what I see more and more is, you know, the corporate influence over the government of the United States. And, you know, like I said in this tour, we're not supposed to get into their ship and try to steer it for them. But as an outside observer, we see this corporate influence, and we see that it's taken away the voice of the people, the voice of the actual people that are the United States themselves. And that's something that's very dangerous, where you're concentrating power in the hands of people whose primary motive is profit. And does that work for you? Has it been working for you? That's my question you have to ask yourself, is how's that working out for you? And if it isn't working out for you, then what is it you got to do? You have to take control again of your government. You have to take control of the voices of those people that you elect, and choose wisely those people that represent you. And we have a method, which is a very difficult method. If a leader of our people is not acting in the best interest of the people, the clan mother has to go to that person and tell him, you know, we're observing you and we've seen that you're not working in the best interest of the people. They give him 2 warnings. The third time when they go to him, they take with them a person who is a male faith keeper and a woman faith keeper, and the clan mother, they approached him and said, you know, you really have not listened to us. You have not done what you need to do in order to represent your people. And so now we take away your title. And when we take away your title, we take away your entire identity. You have no identity. You don't have any place within our community where you can be recognized and where you can belong. You have to go someplace else. You have to go away from your community. You have to live there. So that type of shame has kept our leaders from acting against the interests of the people, you know? But you have to have some kind of a strong sanction that says that, you know, that when you start to act in a way that doesn't help, and it doesn't represent the people positively, there has to be a consequence to that. The only consequence they have is they don't re-elect that person, you know? But the way in which we know that money manipulates who does and who doesn't get elected, that takes away that equation of the people having the ability to withdraw the support from someone who is not acting in their interests.
Today's headline is all about who's raising more money.
Sure.
And, you know, both sides, Trump, Hillary, and it's become a money-raising popularity contest, not the will of the people, or how the people will be served.
Yeah.
And that's a message that I think that the native voice has to be strong, to validate it, to bring it to forth, because as Peter is standing next to me, that voice is still there and very strong. Tell me a little bit about the Culture Center that you just started.
Yeah. Last October, we opened the Seneca Art and Culture Center, and this was about almost 20 years in the making. And but the building that we opened last October, with the support of our nation, of our Seneca Nation, with the support of private donors, with the support of the state of New York government, and all of them coming together to form, you know, the ability for us to build this building. What we have there, we have an opportunity with a gallery to tell our history, the history that is mostly unknown by people. We have an opportunity through our classrooms to bring in young people and to spread this message that we're talking about this morning, to educate. We have an orientation theater where we show our creation story. We created an animated film to explain portions of our creation story so that people realize we have a long, long history of being here on this place that we call Turtle Island, on our mother the earth, and that this is something that we understand, you know, how things came to be the way they are. Then at the same time, we have within the entryway, we have a gift shop, we have a great big auditorium with a rollout seating so that we can have performances indoor. We also have the ability to retract that seating and set up for tables so that people could hold a conference or a dinner or a benefit there or something like that. We have a green room, we have a caterer's kitchen, and we have all of this within this new facility that we just opened. And so the visitors are coming to it now, they're attracted to it. So what is interesting about this, Harmon, is we have this Seneca Art and Culture Center on the site of a 17th century Seneca town that was destroyed by the French in 1687. We are returning native plants to the earth there. We're removing the invasive species, and we're accelerating the spread of these native plants. The other day we released thousands of larvae of the native ladybug, the nine-spotted ladybug, onto the land. We're kind of like letting them reestablish themselves in the environment, because as we know, that Asian ladybug has come in and
Keep
kind
it
of
clean.
Yeah, we want to keep everything, return it back to the way our Mother Earth should be restored and the way it should be taken care of. That's part of our responsibility. While we're here, we have to take care of our mother and hand it forward to those generations that are yet unborn. We say the faces that are coming from beneath the earth that are yet unborn. We have to spread this message. Over this summer, I had the opportunity to go to my nation, to the Seneca Nation, and sit down with, 8 and 9-year-olds, 10 and 11-year-olds, and just talk about the very same things that I'm talking to you about right here, and to show this to them, and to make the point that Harmon was making. It's the young people that will be responsible for carrying this forward. I will not be here forever, And this morning I woke up, I said to my wife, I kind of feel like a dinosaur. I mean, there aren't many of us still doing this, and am I losing my head here because I'm still working at this, I'm still saying these things. But I feel like I was taught all of this, I was given all of this. I had the opportunity to hear from my elders what they wanted me to understand and know. And then they gave me the responsibility, they pushed me to the front, they said, here, you take that responsibility and you say these things. You remind yourself and others of the importance of this message. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you for such wonderful work. Makes my heart feel so good. How do people support what you're doing?
Well, the main thing I think is, somebody asked me that yesterday, is there anything I can sign? I don't have anything for you to sign. I don't have a petition. What I want you to do is I want you to tell your government to honor the treaties that they made with the native people. I want them to think twice before they do things that violate our treaty. I want them to, respect their original agreements. The one signed by the first president of the United States, George Washington. When he signed that treaty, he signed it in full faith. He understood all of the articles of that treaty, and he signed it. Timothy Pickering negotiated that and said, this is a promise that you can depend upon. So if all of that is true, then all I'm asking you to do is, when you choose a leader, remind them that there are many, many native people. Today we sit here, Harmon and I, we can walk out the door, we can see the beauty that the people are creating here in this place, this beautiful place called New Mexico. All of these artists coming from all over the place, creating beautiful things. These people all deserve to maintain their way of life. And all we're saying to you is, help us to be, able to do that. Don't let the United States government get in and start meddling and taking apart agreements that it made over 200 years ago.
How do people access the Culture Center on the web?
The way you can access us is ganondagan.org. Ganondagan.org is sponsored by our Friends organization. It will tell you all the things that are going on in our part of the world. And I'm inviting you, each and every one of you, come to Canandaigua, New York on November the 11th of this year, 2016. Meet us on the lawn of the Ontario County Courthouse at 2 p.m. and we'll commemorate this Canandaigua Treaty. We'll invite you back to the West Gibson Street Elementary School for a meal. We'll all share a meal together. Then we'll have a speaker who will speak to this treaty, and he'll share his information that he has about this treaty. In the evening, we have social dancing. We welcome all of you to come and join with us. This is all free. We're not charging you for any of this. Just come and join with us and put your voices together with ours, and we celebrate that we have been living together in peace and friendship for more than 200 years. November the 11th, 2016.
Let's spell out Ganondagan.
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 G-A-N